I was amongst the 3 youngest people on campus when I came in. Yeah, I was all of 23 when I landed up in ISB. What stood out for me was back then was the faculty. I think the fact that I would learn from some of the best professors globally, and that was unmatched anywhere. I think that was a huge draw for me in terms of then firming up my decision to say, here's the place that I'll come to. What also helped was it was a 1-year MBA, so I always felt that I could do something else if I wanted to. But once I came here, I think there was no turning back. It was very transformative for me personally, because being so young, I think coming into a place where most of the students were much older, very transformative for me. For me, it was not just learning from faculty or learning from, I was also learning a lot from other students. And let's just not say about literal knowledge or business school knowledge which you would learn in books, but I think just generally about team building, about how to handle situations. I think how different people think, and folks with a lot more experience, they come at things with a very different perspective. I think I learned a lot from those perspectives beyond just what any other person would. It just gives you that platform to experiment further and try new things in life. So I felt I wanted to do entrepreneurship. I think the seed got germinated a little bit more in ISB, and then out of ISB, I actually started the course that I then ended up taking. Any entrepreneurial journey that you do, while what gets covered in the news or what otherwise people talk about is the success, but there's a lot of failure that also happens. In fact, my own philosophy on entrepreneurship is it's a lot about minimizing failure. How do I reduce the probability of failure? Because inherently, I've taken a lot of risk. The minute I've decided to become an entrepreneur, or the minute I've decided to incubate a new business. And then for me, a lot of it is how do you deal with failures that are inevitable in the journey that you have taken, increase your probability of success at all points of time. So immediately after ISB, I actually went and joined Anand Bazar Patrika. And I think the main draw for me to join ABP was Pramath. So Dr. Pramath Raj Sinha, first Dean of ISB, I think someone a lot of us look up to. I still do to this day, and it was a huge draw for me to let me go and join Pramath, work for Pramath. And Pramath very quickly moved on from ABP in under a year, and he started his own organization called 9.9 Media. And I think that was also the seed for when my entrepreneurial journey started, because I joined him there in Delhi. So I moved from Calcutta to Delhi. I was working with him over there. But while I was doing a short stint with him for about 8 or 9 months, I had already started to work on Gadi.com, which sort of became CarDekho.com as the journey progressed. That seed had started. So there was actually a very close friend of mine from ISB, Vivek. And Vivek had just gotten off a success. Straight out of ISB, he had started a company called DesiMartini.com. And he had just sold it to Hindustan Times, and initial success with the internet. And he was very keen to do stuff. So Vivek and I kept talking about doing something together as when I landed up in Delhi. And Vivek was very, back then, sort of inspired with the fact that, if you have the right domain name, you'll do well. And he and I was working with Pramath in, ABP back then. And it was very clear to me that classifieds was going from print to digital. I told him that the largest categories in print are auto and education. Those are the two sectors that we should sort of pursue and do together. And that was the genesis of us doing Gadi.com, and later we did StudyTimes.com that became StudyNation.com, which were the two sort of main startups that we ended up doing under Accent. We roped in another batchmate called Bharni, who also came on board. In fact, Bharni joined technically before I did. So 3 of us, Ankur then came in for a short time and then moved on. And later Bharni also moved on to do his own company. And it was largely just Vivek and I who drove both Gadi.com and StudyNation.com and grew it significantly. At Gadi, what happened is I started to realize that we were falling a little bit behind in the traffic race. CarDekho was doing very well in terms of traffic, so was Carvale. We were monetizing fairly well. I think I had some strengths in terms of monetization. So I actually moved Gadi down the path of monetizing used cars well before, say, a CarDekho did. And my focus increasingly went to building a cloud services platform around Gadi, starting to focus a lot more on used. And that was one of the big attractions for CarDekho. So Amit and I used to actively compete with each other. We used to have sort of long conversations about things. And I think there was huge amounts of mutual respect. So he actually pushed quite hard to say, come on board, what you're building in Gadi, come and build it with me. And I said, you guys buy out the company and then the whole thing will happen. And that's exactly what happened. We, CarDekho bought Gadi.com from Naspers. I got a fair chunk of CarDekho as part of that deal. And that's when we immediately went to fundraise, right? That's when we sort of went for our first large fundraise. Very small company. We were doing barely $5-6 million in revenue, going to do, right? And we went talking to investors. And I think back then, there was sort of a perfect storm. Suddenly they saw the best team in the country. Amit's very strong in product tech. I was very strong in business, sales, etc. So they saw the two of us come asking for capital. Very strong team, clear traffic leadership, genesis of some things to be built in used. I think this combination of factors led to us getting, in fact, overly valued. We raised back in November 2014, and it was our third conversation for capital, and we got this huge $55 million round where we raised $55 million at a $250 million pre, and that was very quickly followed up before that year ended, before 2015 ended. Google approached us, and they offered to put in even more money. And back then we were like kings of the hill. We thought, hey, we don't need as much. We actually took a little bit less money from them at an even higher valuation. Post which we actually went through a very different phase where, we started to build up a lot of businesses. I think made mistakes, but we also built something of tangible value. And we went through a phase where we were probably a little overvalued, maybe worth a little bit more than what the company was worth. But very quickly we grew into that valuation. And then we raised another close to 160 million across sort of two different rounds in late 2018, early 2019, is when we raised another $160 million. And then the journey just gets easier and easier. Since then, I also started to focus on building out our international business, which is now our second largest business. And last year, we've just completed another $200 million fundraise roughly. So yeah, I think things are now looking up. The journey gets easier also with time, but the challenges are also different. I think the scale of problems we need to solve, etc., also has gone up with time. It's very different. The kind of founder connect you have and how you build is very different when you're running a 20, 300, 1,000 and a 5,000-6,000 people organization. I think there's a lot of change in terms of how maybe I would appreciate a lot less some of the things we learned in ISB on organizational behavior or culture or some of those when we were running a 500,000 people company. At our current scale, I realize those things are very important. All those management books and stuff you read, I think they become very relevant once a company reaches tremendous scale. And today I value those classes, those courses maybe a lot more. It's unending, right? I mean, we'll continue to build. Just because we have become a unicorn doesn't mean anything. I think it's a milestone marker. We'll continue to build, right? And become larger and larger as we go. Continue to solve out more problems. We've entered new countries. We are starting new lines of business. So, our vision will be to continue to solve problems. And, it's very simple. We want to improve personal mobility for anyone in India, right? And increasingly that same vision will translate globally. That how do we solve the whole problem of personal mobility for people? My aspiration is now sort of moving on beyond just, what we can achieve in CarDekho to saying what more beyond, right? I've started to spend a lot more time investing into startups, mentoring other startups, and I enjoy that immensely. We very recently set up Atrium Angels. Three of us got together. That's an ISB alum focused micro VC, and we only invest into ventures started by ISB alums. I think I derive a lot more pleasure out of that, to see maybe some of the learnings that I've had and some of the success that we've achieved. Are some of those skills transferable? Can we help others achieve similar success in their ventures, because of not just capital that we bring in, but also knowledge, networks, etc. I think over the last few years, I've achieved the sense of peace and calm in terms of the fact that yes, a lot of what we have achieved is there. There's still a long way to go. I think that journey sort of never ends. You keep doing more, wanting to do more, but it's also become a little simpler. And I don't think you are sort of once you achieve some success, right, then you're not always castigating yourself or saying that, oh, you did this wrong or that wrong, or feeling that you realize that it's a journey. There will be mistakes, but you will ultimately get to your goal, provided you stay true to what you want to do.